Welcome back to the Wilkes-Barre Connect podcast. Today our guest is Larry Newman with the Diamond City Partnership. Larry, how's it going?
Not bad. Great to see you, Dan.
Thank you for being here with us. And if anyone who's ever spent any time in downtown Wilkes-Barre, I'm sure you have seen Larry walking around. If you stop into circles, you've probably seen Larry getting a sandwich at some point in time downtown. You are a regular in downtown. So thank you for what all you do. Can you talk to us a little bit, Larry, about the Diamond City Partnership and what specifically it is that you do in downtown so that people sort of get a better understanding for it?
Sure. So the Diamond City Partnership is what we call a place management organization. So our job is to go into the office every day and do everything we can to make downtown Wilkes-Barre a better place to work, to visit, to live, and to invest. And we do that by focusing on a whole bunch of different activities. But those activities really fall into three major buckets.
Okay.
The first bucket is improving downtown's environment. The second is improving downtown's image. And the third is improving downtown's economy. So in terms of what we do for the downtown environment, I think one of the most prominent aspects of our operations is our downtown ambassador team. That's the group of folks dressed in orange who most people who have been in downtown Wilkes-Barre have seen at one point or another doing work in the public environment. They provide supplementary services to make downtown more clean, more attractive, and more comfortable. So, for example, last year our folks removed the equivalent of 19 30-gallon bags of trash from downtown's sidewalks and doorways each week.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. We are the folks who maintain the hanging baskets in the spring and summer. And then the sidewalk planters that are also seen in various parts of downtown. We do tree planting. We provide hospitality services to folks who are looking for directions and then something that I think has become a very important part of what we do. We actually, during the last several years, have an ambassador who is trained to provide proactive outreach to folks who are at risk on the street, and working to try and proactively connect those folks with services that they need to make their lives better. Because very often we found that there isn't, that there's a disconnect. Often there are a lot of services and a lot of agencies that are doing wonderful work, but there's not necessarily the connection. So
right.
We're on the front line there as well. So that's the environment. In terms of image, many people have been to one of our Sunsets on South Main happy hours in the warm months. We run the holiday market and Small Business Saturday activities in downtown right after Thanksgiving. We do a lot of downtown marketing in terms of our social media channels, our weekly e-blast telling people everything that's going on in downtown. And then all of this is in service of the downtown economy. So we are really the first place where a lot of people come when they are interested in learning more about the potential of investing in downtown, whether it's understanding the downtown market better. We have a lot of market data, but we also do a lot of work to understand what spaces are available, what our downtown occupancy rates look like, to just help facilitate people who might be considering doing anything from opening a business in downtown to doing a more major development in downtown to even just living downtown.
No, and it's been amazing watching things like Sunset on Soma and the marketplaces and all these things post-COVID people always
Mhm.
sort of worried about how are we going to revitalize, how are we going to get people back out. And
Yep.
the nice thing about the holiday market specifically was that was also sort of a COVID response, is that we had this
Yeah.
market, the place that took place on the square, and it was like, well, yes, we can go back inside, but that doesn't mean we should move away from this. And so that you see that marketplace continue to show up in downtown and in the Sunsets and Soma. Can you talk about sort of the community response to those events where it's a lot of effort on your all end to sort of put those things together, but they really are for the community to come together and come out, and sort of what the response has been?
Sure, absolutely. Well, I think a lot of this has been, as you pointed out, because downtowns have been really uniquely challenged
Mm-hmm.
as places as a result of the pandemic. So
Mm-hmm.
I like to say that downtowns are at their core places that bring people together. And the better that they do that job, the better they succeed economically as a place. And of course, COVID interrupted all of that. So every different way that you could think of a function, a basic function that downtown provided, from people coming together for events, to go shopping or to go see the movies or go to the Kirby Center, to come together in office spaces. All of that got disrupted. And so we really have had to rebuild from the ground up as a result. And we're not the only ones. Obviously, every downtown in the country has had to do this to some extent. But Wilkes-Barre has traditionally punched above its weight as an office center. And so it conversely got smacked down a little more than most as a result of COVID. So really, these events that you're talking about, Dan, are responses to getting people back into downtown.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been thrilled. One of the things that we try to do with our events, and you alluded to this, is we want to always be able to learn from what we do and make adjustments so that we continue to do a better job. And so, as you said, we moved from being on the square to Midtown Village, and now we're able to do this in an indoor space that is a former banking hall, which is really one of the signature indoor spaces of our downtown. And people really have responded to that. The event is growing bigger and bigger every year. We have more and more vendors. And, my hope is that this can continue to be built on to get people coming into downtown throughout the holiday season. And similarly, we started with the Soma live music happy hour events last year. We experimented with doing a projection mapping festival, and the term projection mapping, basically projecting cool stuff on buildings.
Yep.
And we had wretched weather, but despite that, it was well received enough that we're going to try and do that again moving forward to promote downtown's arts district.
Yeah.
And so we're always trying to learn from what we're doing. I don't know that things are working well, but we can always do it better. And there are people who still are not. I think that we've gone from a time when going to downtown Wilkes-Barre was a significant part of the life of everyone who lived in the greater Wyoming Valley and beyond, because of the role that downtown played. That is no longer the case, but it is still an incredibly important place for a lot of people, and its health is still of critical importance to the entire region.
Yeah.
And so we are trying to use these events to reintroduce people who might not have been down here in a while, and get them to look at downtown as a great place to be, and to check out our businesses and our venues while they're down here.
Well, and speaking of that, and I think you're right that downtown does still play, I think, a very critical role, because I think over the summer specifically, when you really think about it, there's not a weekend that there's not an event or something that is
Mhm.
happening in downtown Wilkes-Barre. So I think you're right that on paper it may not be a part of everyone's schedule. Oh, I need to go downtown. It's not like I'm going to the Boscovs, or I'm doing
Right,
all
right,
the things that I used to have to
right,
do. But I do think that at some point, almost every week, someone ends up in downtown,
right.
because of just what's still there, and sort of that it's the throughway, to that area. But you talk about the idea, that it being a business center and a business hub. What have been some of the things, and really, I guess it's sort of in the post-COVID world, that you all have done to try to attract businesses, or highlight the spaces that are still available and some of the
Mhm.
opportunities that exist in downtown Wilkes-Barre?
Well, so this is an area where we have worked very closely with the Wilkes-Barre Chamber and other folks involved in the Wilkes-Barre Connect program, and with our partners at the City of Wilkes-Barre.
Mm-hmm.
We have really worked as programs rolled out to provide incentives for businesses to locate in the city of Wilkes-Barre, such as the Spark program, which
Mm-hmm.
was a program that is no longer running, but which was funded initially using COVID recovery funds that the city made available, and then the chamber created a program. When it came time to businesses looking at downtown, we were the folks who basically maintain the inventory of what's available. We're talking on a regular basis to brokers, to landlords, to understand what's available. And not just that, to make sure that people are connecting to spaces that actually work best for their businesses. And so we're doing that on a regular basis, and we worked with many of those Spark program recipients who were new to the city, to try and assist them in finding a space that would maximize the chances of their success. Um, we we have also, um, you know, been working on larger blocks of office space. So we do everything from working with people who are looking at occupying a storefront, because
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, the storefront economy is the part of the downtown economy that is most visible to the most people,
Yeah.
right? But at the same time, the upper floor economy, as I
Mm-hmm.
would put it, is less visible, but probably more important in terms of its economic impact,
Mm-hmm.
whether that's offices or residential or other types of events. So there's a synergy between both of them. And so, for example, we work to try and make sure that whenever possible, the major office tenants in downtown are having their needs met. We serve as another line of communication, the voice of the downtown business community, when there are issues that need to be addressed with the city, with the police department, with the Department of Public Works. And we serve as another avenue to get those concerns to folks.
Mm-hmm.
And that has proven to be, really, really helpful. Um, but, the other important thing that we do is we are doing that day-to-day incremental improvement in the quality of life at street level in downtown, which makes it easier for people to feel comfortable making major investments.
Yeah.
And so we're sort of setting the table, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
for a lot of those major investments. And it's a it's not necessarily always a visible role, but it's a critical role.
No, and I think it's important too that to realize, and I like that distinction between the that sort of the first floor, the storefront, and
Hmm.
the upper floor businesses, and sort of how downtown works. Because you're right, there are a lot of businesses that we see on that first floor. But as a downtown tenant as well, I know that there are a lot of
Right.
businesses that are upstairs that people
They're
don't think about, that
upstairs.
are in these buildings, and it's like, oh, You work downtown? Well, I do. You don't have a storefront, so you don't see me there. So
You don't know I'm here, right?
Exactly. And I remember, and also as a Spark recipient, I do remember one of the conversations that we had early on. You said something that you said that was always stuck with me is that you enjoy grand openings, but you're really, really excited about anniversaries and the notion of
Yes.
not only did we bring a business into downtown, but the business is still here and we're having anniversaries with those businesses.
Exactly.
And so not just attracting people, but maintaining and retaining individuals. Can you sort of talk about a little bit more about what it is that you're doing to sort of help these new businesses sort of find home here in Wilkes-Barre?
Sure. So so again, a lot of the work that we do is behind the scenes work, but a lot of it is marketing work. So any business in downtown is able to take advantage of the resources that we have created to help everyone market themselves as part of the downtown community. So, for example, our downtownwilkesbarre.org website, which is if you Google Downtown Wilkes-Barre, our website is what comes up. And there is a downtown business directory. There is an event calendar. There are opportunities to be able to and this is available for free to any downtown business as long as you're physically located within our boundaries. The idea is that you can be listed on the directory. You can get the whatever boost there is from the SEO, that kick, and there are also resources that we have online, including everything from advice on how to start a business from a licensing standpoint in the city of Wilkes-Barre, which is something that a lot of people often struggle finding that information. And so we're trying to put it all in one place for people, to additional resources like we run a facade grant program, a storefront and facade grant program, which is a relatively small matching grant program, but it's a program that is sufficient to be able to fund signage improvements and storefront improvements. And it's really, for storefront businesses. But the idea being, here's a way to be able to, maybe you want to do a sign that otherwise you might stretch to have to afford.
Yeah.
And we're providing half of the cost of that sign if you're doing something that's going to elevate the quality of the pedestrian experience as people are walking around. So we have programs like that. And then a lot of what we do, and Dan, you won't be surprised to know that I spend a lot of time talking to people who are first-time entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And I think you also know that part of the goal of Connect is to link people, no matter what their experience and where they are in the business cycle, to the assistance that they need to be able to be as successful as they can possibly be.
Yeah. And
so sometimes it's as simple as getting a referral from, somebody contacts me and says, so-and-so told me to give you a call. I'd like to open a restaurant, whatever. And I hear that you you have a list of available spaces in downtown. And I say, that's great. And then I ask, have you ever been in business before? And if they say no, it's an opportunity for me to get them connected with the Small Business Development Center, with the other resources that they need to maximize the chances that they will be successful. Because it just absolutely is such an awful waste for everyone when someone goes through the trouble of starting a business and because of avoidable circumstances, they're not able to succeed. It's just awful.
No, and I think you're right that there's a lot, and I think the footprint of downtown Wilkes-Barre between where the chamber is located and where you're located and leadership is located and SBDC, there's all these entities that exist in downtown Wilkes-Barre where legitimately come down, park your car, and take a tour really quick, and in half a day you've gotten all the information that you're going to need and met the partners that are going to be needed to help you be successful. And I think it's also great that that's also a quick walking tour. It's 15 minutes of walking, and you've hit all those places, but also that you all play so well together. That if you call one, if I call you, I know I'm talking to Dottie at some point. And if I call Dottie, I know at some point I'm going to get sent to Lindsay.
Right, exactly. Well, and the reality is that I think that's one of the advantages of not being a huge place, of being, we are a city that is a small city. We are a city where the scale is such that we can all have personal relationships and work with each other. And but at the same time, we're large enough that there are a remarkable number of resources that are available. Another example that I give that's applicable to certain kinds of businesses is the state's Keystone Innovation Zone program, which is intended for early stage businesses in specific tech-heavy industries. And we've been so downtown Wilkes-Barre is a designated KIZ geography. That program locally is administered by TechBridge, but they are another partner. We talk to the folks at Ben Franklin Technology Partners all the time because, again, one of the, and this goes back to your question about what's going on to boost the office economy. Well, we're fortunate that we do have, for a community of our size, a remarkable number of tech startups, tech adjacent businesses, and not just that, they're linked together in a community.
Yeah.
And I think that the more that we're able to nurture that through our partnerships, the better off we are, because so many of those businesses, again, like the fact that they're in a place where they can bump into someone when they go for lunch, and have a conversation that saves them an email or a phone call. So.
No, and that is one of the great things about downtown Wilkes-Barre is the notion that if you go out for lunch, you will run into someone and save yourself an email. It happens almost every day that you run into somebody. But I think that also speaks to the notion of what Connect, outside of the podcast, but what Connect is trying to do is saying all those people that you've listed are, our Connect partners. And so through the Chamber and through Connect, those are the ones that are helping to uplift the community. I always loved when Joe was still with the Chamber, he'd always tell the story about when Ian was looking for a place to start American Paper Bag Company, and how it was an email that someone happened to see that made sure it got to Joe, who then got to you, and all these things. And all of a sudden, here's this company from Ireland who makes home in Wilkes-Barre because someone answered an email and made the right connections, and that we really are a community that's built on the back of those connections. And so thinking about that, and all the great things that exist, and outside of a place to sit down and eat breakfast, what do we need in downtown Wilkes-Barre?
I hear you. Point made, Dan. Point made. So I think that there are a number of things that we, are still looking for in downtown. And again, some of this is because society as a whole and the way that we conduct so much business has changed so dramatically over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
So, but I think so to answer that question, one of the things that we want to see more of are what I would call resident serving businesses. So one of the things that a lot of people are surprised about when I tell them this is that, certainly people know that there are more people living in downtown than there were a few years ago. But actually, we have more than 1,000 more people living within the boundaries of our district than we did a decade ago.
Wow.
And in fact, downtown's residential population has grown by 24% since the start of the pandemic. And so we really, to serve those, so how many people is that? Well, depending on, whether you draw the line based on my boundary or whether you draw the line based on the way that most people think of what downtown Wilkes-Barre is, which is a little larger. It's between 3,500 and 4,000 people.
Wow.
And that's a lot of people. Now, is it enough to support a grocery store? Probably not a major grocery. Well, I can tell you, we need more people. But the fact is, what would help us would be more places where residents could fulfill their daily needs within an easy walk. And some of that stuff, which we did have in our downtown, disappeared as a result of COVID and as a result of, giant national pharmacy chains going into bankruptcy and all that stuff. And generational changes, honestly, because for a lot of small business owners, a lot of them who had been in business for a long time, saw what was going on during COVID and in downtown and elsewhere, said, you know what? I've known I needed to retire, and this is as good a time as any. And so we did lose some businesses, but that rebuilding that, figuring out how to come up with new options for residents to be able to meet basic grocery needs within an easy walk of where they live. Helping people to get get all of the things that, people used to run out to Rite Aid to get at lunchtime and filling those gaps. And so those are some of the things that we are really focused on. And obviously we're not the only ones focused on them. Our other partners are looking at that as well. Those are all really important. But then the other thing that we want to be able to add is we want to be able to continue to add more residents, not just living in apartments, but if I had my druthers, I'd want to add a broader range of housing products, because within walking distance of the square, an easy walk of the square, because again, not everyone wants to live in the same way. Some people do want some outdoor space, no matter how small. Some people want to live in a townhouse. Some people want a backyard. And the great thing about downtown is that we do have housing product that meets all of those needs, but in some of those categories, we don't quite have as much as we could actually support. And so that's something that we are going to be working on.
All right, no, that's awesome. That's really cool to hear. I know as an entrepreneur who's in downtown, I talk to people often about the spaces that are there, and people have tons of ideas about what should and could go into these spaces. And none of them have a budget for it, of course, but the ideas at least are there. If someone has these ideas, who, outside of reaching out to the Connect program or these things, who should they turn to at least get the ball rolling? Or at least if they, outside of just calling you directly to say, hey, Larry, I have a crazy idea. Can I see a space? Is that enough to get in to see a space? Do they need more than that? Like, how do they get the ball rolling? If it is just a wild shot of an idea, but there's something that someone wants to look at.
Well, I think I certainly anyone, I'm always happy to try and be as helpful as I can with anyone if they want referrals to potential spaces. And we are, obviously our organization, we don't serve as a broker. What we try to do is we open doors. We try to say, okay, here's a list of possible spaces that might work. Here are the contacts for those spaces, whether they are the brokers or the landlords. And then you have to go out and talk to those folks. But going back to what we said before, Dan, the question is, okay, what else do you need to be able to make this idea a reality? And that's where the whole ecosystem of Connect comes into play. With that said, I think there's all kinds of amazing stuff that has been showing up in downtown. We see much more of a leisure and recreation economy evolving in downtown. We have an indoor climbing gym in downtown. We have an indoor golf simulator in downtown. We have things that nobody would have imagined are actually here. We've got all sorts of opportunity, but and I think we will see more of that as time goes on.
Mm-hmm.
But if there are, one of the things that we are able to do, again, because we do try to maintain as much market data as we can, is if somebody comes to us and says, how many people live, what are the spending patterns for people who live within a 15-minute walk of public square?
Mm-hmm.
We have that information.
Gotcha.
We can share that with people. Somebody can use it to build a business plan, to
Mm-hmm.
go talk to someone about financing.
Right.
And so that's part of the role that we play is to supply people with actionable market data that they can use to build their business idea or build their business.
Yeah. No, that's good. I think that's a good distinction, that it's you're there to provide the ability and the information that they may need to go to the other people, not so much that
Exactly.
we're not the people, but we can give you the information to help you with the argument, as far as going to financiers and all these other people, that we'll have that information for you.
Exactly.
Thinking about the idea of what is downtown Wilkes-Barre, maybe we should have started there. So we'll circle back to that. What, so you said your definition might be different than others. What is downtown Wilkes-Barre? Like, what are those boundaries? What are we actually talking about?
Yeah, it's a great question, because again, I think people have different ideas.
Mm-hmm.
So when I talk about downtown Wilkes-Barre as a neighborhood, and by the way, I don't just work here, I also live in downtown. So I'm a downtown resident and have been for many decades. So, it's funny because I'm interpreting the boundaries of my own neighborhood, right?
Right.
Basically, when we talk about downtown, we're really talking about the area of the city that extends from the river
Mm-hmm.
to the railroad tracks, and from Kings in the north to Wilkes in the south. So basically from North Street in the north,
Mm-hmm.
On the Kings campus, to really Ross Street in the south, which is on the edge of the southern edge of the Wilkes campus, and then from the riverfront back to, I say railroad tracks, some people say Wilkes-Barre Boulevard. So that's really the area that we're talking about. It's really an area of only a couple hundred acres.
Yeah.
But within that, while DCP deals with all of it,
Mm-hmm.
The services that we provide, the downtown ambassador services that we provide, which are funded specifically through something called a business improvement district, cover probably 80% of that geography.
Gotcha.
That really focuses in on the portion of downtown that has the most commercial activity,
Mm-hmm.
and doesn't necessarily go into, because there are parts of downtown, the downtown neighborhood, that are primarily residential.
Yeah.
And we're not really in those sections. It's really where the bulk of the commercial activity is.
Okay. But it's still a pretty decent size when you think about downtown. And I think that people often forget, because I think once the riverfront section of it, well, I think it's obvious the river is part of downtown Wilkes-Barre. I think because it's sort of on the outside of the commercial aspect, and Wilkes and Kings, they forget that not only are you trying to upkeep public square, you're trying to upkeep a river as well, and program that entire space, and that it is walkable as well. The walk from the river into public square isn't that long, and there's parking available, and there's all these things, and so it's not. You're right. It's a livable downtown. People do live there, and it's an actual neighborhood as well.
Exactly. And I think, downtown is the oldest part of the city.
Mm-hmm.
It's the original town. It's the original part of the city. It is only 8% of the total land area of the city of Wilkes-Barre.
Yeah.
But that 8% accounts for more than 50% of all the jobs in the city.
Yeah.
And an incredible amount of the total economic output of the city. And that's, due to its history and how it developed as a business district. But you're absolutely right. It is walkable. It really is important to provide places where people don't have to be dependent on a car to live their daily lives. I am a strong believer that every community worth its salt should be able to provide a place like that. And it's much easier in some places than in others. And for our region, downtown Wilkes-Barre is that place. It's a place where you don't necessarily need to have a car to be able to live your daily life. Now, I'm not saying that every service is at your disposal, and obviously there are some issues, but the reality is that we are trying to make a downtown that is a place for people. And one of the ways to build a place for people is to make a place where you can live your life without needing to always get into a car to go do something.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. And I think downtown is making a turn. As someone who's a transplant and not from here originally, moving here, there were all the horror stories of what downtown Wilkes-Barre used to be. And when I moved here in 2008, it wasn't like that even then, but that was right when the riverfront was opening and all these things. And so for me, it's only ever gotten better every single year because that was when I moved here. And so I've only ever seen it on an upward swing. But I do think that region that we're talking about in downtown and as sort of that heart and soul of the area and of Wilkes-Barre is growing. And I think it's important that we continue to support it because you're right. While it is a small fraction of what we're looking at space-wise, so much of the business is there, but it's the heart and soul. I mean, I tell people all the time, thinking about Northeast Pennsylvania, downtown Wilkes-Barre has more international restaurants and flavors than almost any other part of this region, no matter where you go, that you're going to be able to get that much in that. It wasn't done as an intentional thing. It just sort of happened. That we have all these people that live in this area and work in this area, and that's what's there. And I think what I love about Luzerne County and about downtown Wilkes-Barre is that a lot of the good that happens just naturally has happened because that's where we live. And that's sort of the way things are done here. And so I appreciate that. So with that, Larry, I think we'll close up there. So thank you for your time today. Is there anything else, last minute pitches for folks who might be considering downtown Wilkes-Barre, anything that you would say to them to get them to move in?
Well, I think what I would say is if you are interested in learning more about downtown Wilkes-Barre as a neighborhood and what it has to offer, certainly we check out our organization's website, which is downtownwilkesbarre.org. And there is a wealth of information there, and everything from what's happening in downtown on our event calendar to, as I said before, a directory of downtown's restaurants, all the restaurants that you just referred to a directory of stores and other service businesses, to resources for people who might be interested in learning more about investing in whatever way within our downtown footprint. And I just, I'm very proud of the work that we've done here with our partners at Diamond City Partnership over the last several decades. And we're hoping that we continue to just build the momentum and move things forward, because it is truly both a somewhat misunderstood neighborhood, as you suggested, and also I think an extraordinary neighborhood. I love living here. I love working here, and I'm glad to know that you and so many other people do as well.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Larry. Have a great day.
Thanks. You too, Dan. Take care. Thank you for the opportunity.